of interview, Christopher Wallace builds upon previous successes as the founder and CEO of Insight, a sales consulting and coaching practice, and his more than 15 years of sales, marketing, and corporate leadership. Chris's primary professional focus is to help companies better align the strategies of the boardroom with the daily execution at the front lines. Helping to bridge that gap allows Chris to influence constant progress from organization-wide culture shifts to individual employee breakthroughs in job satisfaction and commitment. In the end, the company wins, the employee wins, and the customer wins. Beyond his work with clients, Chris is able to apply his passion as a teacher and author. He is taught as an adjunct MBA professor at Temple's Fox School of Business and has been published in outlets such as Harvard Business Review, HBR.org. Chris has received a BA in Public Relations from Syracuse University's Newhouse School and has his MBA from Temple University. He lives in Villanova, Pennsylvania with his wife Sarah and their 2 young children. Now I will turn the floor over to Chris.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was quite an introduction. I got chills a couple of times there. That was it was nice to hear somebody else read that. So thank you, and welcome to everybody who is attending today. We're really excited to kick off this partnership with PACE. This is a long time in the making. We've been having discussions over the past several months and been familiar with PACE in the past, but really found an opportunity to bring a little bit different topic of discussion to the PACE membership. What I'd like to do is I'm going to set the stage for today's conversation and say, obviously you see the title of the series and that's the reason you're here. But what I would say about it is today the conversation is really going to focus on really making the case for why the brand is important. Brand is such a, it's kind of an undefinable word in business today. It sort of means something different to everybody. So when we talk about what a brand is and what makes that up, it's important for people to recognize how important and how critical elements of the brand are in their day-to-day. I don't think people think about it all the time. They think it's for the agency to handle or the senior marketing people to handle, but brand trickles down to everything an organization does. So today's discussion really is going to focus on what it is, where it fits, why it's important. We're going to walk through a couple of examples, and then at the end we're going to talk about really what the jumping off point is for an organization that is really trying to take the brands that they represent. In some cases it might be multiple brands, understand those brands, and make sure that their operation is set up to support those brands and represent them the best way they possibly can. So this is really the case for why brand is important today. And each one of the 4 parts of this series will sort of build on the previous one. So that's what you can expect for today. I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of an understanding of who we are at Interview and sort of what our perspective is, because that shapes everything you're going to hear after that. So the way that we look at the world is we've done some research of senior marketing executives. What we found is that 66%, 2/3 of marketing executives believe that their brand messages is breaking down once they create it in the marketing suite and they start to distribute that message out internally. Between the marketing suite at the corporate office and the customer's ears, it breaks down somewhere along that line. That's what the marketers believe. The way the story is being told is not necessarily the way that it's been crafted. You see here kind of the imagery with the soup can on the end of a string. The reality is, I think for marketers, it feels like that's the way that they're communicating with their own people. And a lot of times when you look at the way that the message is being received, it looks that way as well. The message is not being received the same way. It becomes a game of whisper down the lane that nobody's winning. When we look at the cost and the impact of that, 72% of senior marketers believe that the breakdown of their message is costing their organization in the 7 figures. So what's even more interesting about that number is 18%, nearly 1 in 5 marketing executives believe that it's costing their organization $10 million or more annually. So what the number highlights is there is a recognition of pain here. The marketers feel as though a lot of money and effort and investment is going into crafting their brand story, but it's not being told effectively. not only is it not being told effectively, but it hits them where it hurts, and that's in the wallet. Marketers are judged on whether or not their brand is getting traction, and if it's not, it has a negative impact financially on the organization. Finally, in the study that we did, alignment between marketing and frontline teams was rated as the #1 opportunity to increase marketing ROI. So when marketers looked at the different options for how they could improve the effectiveness of their marketing investments, there were things like, more dollars in digital and improve the creative that you're developing. And all of those things, website overhaul. So some blocking and tackling marketing items. And the thing that rose to the top was better alignment between the marketing suite and the people out on the front lines talking to customers. So marketers recognize there's a need. This is why Interview exists. We exist, I tell people when they see this slide, we're the string that connects the two soup cans. We just want to make sure that it's a better string and that the message that's coming through is high definition and not breaking apart so people can't understand it. We start by asking the fundamental question. We would sit with a marketer and say, how confident are you that the people talking to your customers are telling the same story that you developed? And I'm assuming that the people on the phone can imagine that the response that we get to that question is not very confident. The numbers back that up. So that's a little bit about who we are Interview and how that sort of frames our view of this topic. So let's jump right in. Let's think about how organizations are reaching their customers today. Let's talk about the experience that people are having with a brand. So when we think about that, you look at advertising. So some form of a screen, for lack of a better phrase, a screen or direct mail and some other sorts of kind of direct response marketing and advertising accounts for $219 billion in expenditures in the United States. I'm going to say that number again, $219 billion. No, that is not last night's Mega Millions jackpot, which I did not win, unfortunately. But the almost $220 billion spent on advertising, primarily that is being spent on screens. So television advertising is projected to drop for the second year in a row to $70 billion, while that money is shifting over into digital investments with a growth of 20% year over year, jumping to $107 billion spent through digital marketing and advertising means. Email marketing, website, search engine optimization, search engine marketing, banner ads, pay-per-click, redirect, all the digital type campaigns that are driving engagement from customers. There's a huge growth there. So when you stop and think about that, those are the primary means through which a marketer is getting their message directly to the customer. And you see the image there, the person sitting in front of that screen, the marketer is able to talk directly to that customer through the marketing that they invest in. Now, that's not the only way that the customer, the consumer, is going to get information about that brand. The messaging is going to shape part of it. The messaging is, I hear a promise that this company is making to me. They're telling me that they can solve X, Y, or Z, or that they have something that I want, and that is triggering something for me. That is triggering an expectation. That's part of how the perception of the brand is put together, part of the makeup of their brand perception. But their experience with the brand is another large part. And we're going to spend more time today talking about that brand experience. When they're interacting with the company, some sort of interaction. Now, yeah, some of that could be digital. It could be clicks. It could be trying to buy something through e-commerce on the internet. There's a couple of different ways that they're interacting with companies. The primary avenue through which they're interacting with companies is on the phone, in person, some sort of a human-to-human interaction. Despite what you read on LinkedIn, artificial intelligence is not replacing people. In fact, there's actually a lot more data to support the fact that most consumers would prefer more human contact. They want more human contact with technology supporting that human so they can deliver a better experience, a more efficient experience, but they would not rather talk to a computer or handle things online. They'd rather talk to an individual. So every single one of those touch points between the company and the consumer is an opportunity to project that brand. Now, when you think about these two, right, these two lenses that we're looking at that shape sort of that brand perception, you have a situation where the marketer, as soon as the marketer is done investing in their advertising, their direct link to the customer is done. Their message that they're delivering to the customer is done. The promise has been made. Okay, think of that analogy. They have made the promise through their direct-to-consumer advertising and marketing. Now it's time for that promise to be kept, and that happens through the individual touch points that happen. This is where expectations are set, and expectations are either met, exceeded, or expectations, you fall short of meeting expectations. This is what shapes the perception of a brand. It is these two things. It's not just what you see in marketing. It's not just what happens when you show up into the store or make a phone call. It is a combination of the two. However, the trend is moving much more toward the brand experience being what is shaping people's perception and shaping their choice and their decisions. We're going to look at a couple of different examples of that right now. So according to a study done by PricewaterhouseCoopers, 75% of U.S. customers say that customer experience is a major factor in a purchase decision. Now, depending on which studies you read and things like that, there are some companies who have done studies that represent that as of 2020, customer experience will replace product and price as the number one factor in a customer's purchase decision. So you think about that. Their purchase decision, their decision to spend dollars is going to be driven primarily by how they're treated and how they interact with that customer, not necessarily what advertising or marketing that they saw. So looking at what those factors are, right, the top choice factors in the PricewaterhouseCoopers study were, number one was speed. So when they interact with an organization, they want there to be efficiency in that interaction. They want there to be speed. The second is convenience. Okay, so you think about those top two as it needs to fit into their life. It needs to be on their terms. Three is a knowledgeable help. They want to interact with somebody who knows what they're talking about, who is empathetic to their situation, and will do everything they can to help them out. Friendly service, right? They want somebody to do it with a smile. That's number four. Number five is human interaction. They would prefer human interaction. You have to go all the way down to item number 7 before you get into technology being something that the customers prefer. So the top 6 items here are primarily driven by people. It's primarily human-to-human interaction that is driving the perception of that customer experience. Now, when you look at the way that customers and consumers think of the companies they do business with today, 54% of these consumers believe that most or all companies need to improve the customer experience that they provide right now. So the perception of what they're getting right now isn't very high. There's a huge opportunity here for companies to step up and to be projecting the brand that they want to, be investing in projecting the brand, because that is going to determine whether or not customers buy today and into the future. That ties in with another statistic around when Forrester did a recent study, published a study earlier this year, that went back and it looked at the state of customer experience progression, evolution, how well companies were doing. All the statistics over the last couple of years have been customer experience needs to get better, companies are investing in it. Well, they went back and said, well, how are they actually doing? Okay? And what Forrester found was there were 0 companies in the study that they did that emerged as truly strong leaders in their category. Nobody had really improved. Some had gone up, some had gone down, but the net result of the study was, generally speaking, the state of customer experience was flat to worse from where it was when they did the study a couple of years ago. So there's a couple of implications of that. There were 19 industries that they looked at. 13 of the 19 were flat to worse. They looked at 287 brands across those 19 industries, and they surveyed nearly 120,000 adult customers. So this wasn't a small study. And they asked, how are people doing? How are companies doing in winning you over from an experience standpoint? And what they found was even the good ones, even the ones that were good and that were category leaders, didn't get better or really pull away from the pack and emerge as truly standing out in that category in terms of the experience they provide. The net of all these stats here is companies need to be doing this, but they're not actually getting that much better. For all the lip service that's being paid, for all the money that's being invested, maybe they're investing in the wrong things, or maybe it truly is just lip service. But there are opportunities here for companies to truly step up and connect that promise that they're making externally to the customer to the promise that they're delivering on through each one of those customer touch points, not the least of which being contact centers and call centers like the folks on this call are responsible for. So when you think about what this all adds up to, this is really one of my favorite quotes. Kevin Cochran is the CMO of a large digital agency, which for digital people to be talking about customer experience, they're not just doing buy flows and click-throughs and user experience and things like that. They're recognizing how important each one of these customer touch points are in building the reputation of a brand. There's no sustainable differentiation other than your customer experience. Your customer experience is your brand. So when we think back to that initial slide, the two lenses through which a consumer is going to judge the brand, the messages you deliver directly to them and the experiences they have with you, the weight in terms of the consumer's mind is shifting so heavily toward the experience as shaping their perception of the brand that we believe it's a very important area for companies to seek alignment and make investments to put their people in a position to deliver on that promise and reflect that brand. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through a couple of examples. We're going to try to make this real in terms of different companies that you might interact with on a day-in, day-out basis, different brands that you've seen. We picked an industry that is that touches everybody in some way, shape, or form, the insurance industry. One of the other reasons we picked the insurance industry is these are companies that all invest heavily in advertising. You'll see so many commercials time and time again for these organizations. I mean, not like anybody's ever seen a Geico commercial or 40,000 Geico commercials. But when you look at this slide right here, this could be any industry. And I'll give you some parallels for who these brands might be correlated to in another industry. But what you have here on the screen is a sea of sameness. You have a sea of blue. You've got some block letters. You know, one's italicized, one's uppercase, one's lowercase. There's not necessarily a lot of variance in what you see from the brands right here. Allstate has their has a little bit of a mark in there, a brand mark. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But generally speaking, if you were to look at these logos, you wouldn't necessarily know what is different about their brand platform. But who they are as a brand and how they position themselves is critically important to how they are going to be perceived by a customer and the promise they make to them, and what they have to follow through on when they interact with a customer through whatever means it is. Call center, even all the way down to chat. We know that there's going to be some folks on the call that might have chat queues in their contact centers. Chat is another really important reflection. I had a very poor chat experience yesterday with an online e-commerce company, and it really shaped my perception of the investment they are or are not making in their brand. So let's dive into these. We're going to go through, and obviously we're not doing this fully interactive. I always prefer fully interactive. But I'm going to throw these out, and I'll pause a second. Some of you I know are in rooms with some other colleagues and things like that. We're going to let you take a minute, think about it, and kind of come up with your own answers before I do the reveal. So when we think about Geico, everybody stop and take a second and think about, what is Geico's brand platform? What do they stand for? What is the thing that they want to be known for? What's the line in the sand that they have drawn for their brand? I would hope most people get this. Your answer might be cavemen, but I'm not sure if that's the actual answer. But when you think about their brand platform, Geico's all about savings. So ever since, I remember the first time I bought car insurance for myself, I bought Geico. And the reason I bought Geico was because my perception was that I could save more money. I was a college student. I could save money by going with Geico. They told me I could save money. It wasn't saving me money because I didn't have car insurance before, but I just assumed I was going to get the best price from them. That's their brand platform. That's the line they've drawn in the sand. And it's gotten into my consciousness that if somebody says Geico, the first thing I think is 15 minutes can save me 15% or more. Now, what about Progressive? Switch to Progressive. Now, Progressive is one that always makes me laugh because they have kind of like the cavemen, they have a polarizing brand spokesperson, Flo. Everybody on this call just had like a physical reaction when I said Flo. Like they're sometimes like nails on a chalkboard, sometimes they're funny. Like it's really hard to get a sense of why they've invested so much, so heavily in Flo. But that's where they are. But what does Flo offer customers? She's the face, but what is the brand platform that she stands on, that she stands for? Think about that for a minute. Some people that try to see how good their advertising is. Choice. Only Progressive gives you the option to name your own price. The name your own price tool. She's got that sidekick who's kind of a dimwit, and they don't let him use the name your own price tool because he's not as senior as effective as Flo. So he's kind of the black sheep of the family. But when you think about that, they're really doubled down on this idea of only Progressive gives you the option to name your own price. What that means for their customer experience, we're going to get into that in a minute, but that has significant implications for what people expect when they call in, the promise that is being made. Think about Allstate, completely different. Think about Allstate. Now the hands are a little bit of a giveaway here, and probably one of the oldest and best known insurance brands. I remember the jingle from when I was growing up for Allstate. Peace of mind, you're in good hands. We've got your back. We've got you covered, okay? There is stability, there's strength, there's comfort in doing business with Allstate. Now, probably the best and funniest ad campaign of the group are if you've seen them, the Mayhem ads. The guy who, one minute he's burning down his house, the next he's a flare in the middle of the road, he's causing an accident, but everywhere he goes, he is causing destruction in his path. So what they're trying to do is build on a brand platform of life can get messy, right? Gutters fall on Christmas lights and they set your house on fire, and that kind of stuff happens. And if that happens, we've got your back. That is completely different than name your own price or save money. It's a different message. It's for a different customer. And in theory, all of these companies have spent a lot of money on market research. Those brand platforms, these messages were not designed by accident. They said, this is the position we're going to have in the marketplace. It's a big segment of the marketplace. We're not going after everybody, but the people that we're going after, they're going to believe in this message, and we're going to serve them properly. So you're in good hands is a very different position, a very unique one. Esurance, this is probably the least known and probably the newest, the least familiar to everybody on the screen. But the reason I included Esurance is because they just invested heavily in a rebrand. They invested heavily in changing their tagline, changing their overall perception in the marketplace, and they brought Dennis Quaid in to be their spokesperson. Ironically, and I did do a little research on this, it's the first time that Dennis Quaid has ever appeared has ever been a paid spokesperson for a product in his entire career. Now, they make a joke in the ad about they chose me, Dennis Quaid, because apparently I'm highly likable. So they're going for a much different theme, a much different message in what they're trying to convey. Now, I'm curious if anybody knows what it is, but I'll give you a second to think about it, and then I'll do the reveal. Simplicity. Surprisingly painless. That is their new tagline. That is everything that they're going for in their ad campaign. And ironically enough, when you think about their positioning and how distinct it is compared to the others, Esurance is owned by Allstate. So this is a subsidiary of Allstate. And inside their portfolio of insurance brands, they have one that is going after one audience, and they have another that is going after another audience. This is not just insurance for insurance sake. This is an opportunity for them to carve out their piece. And again, they have, in theory, spent a lot of money to both identify what the right messages are for the audience they want to reach, and then spend heavily to reach that audience through mass market advertising. Okay? So let's look at these all in total. All right? If you were to drop a contact center agent into an environment for any one of these, let's think about what this means for that agent. Right? What is the experience that they have to deliver? How does it impact their day? How does it impact their conversation? How should it impact that conversation? There's going to be a different expectation set by every type of marketing and advertising that's done by these companies. And once that promise is made, it's critically important that the person who answers the phone delivers on that promise. What does that look like? Okay? So we're going to use a couple examples. I've taken 3 parts of a typical conversation: the greeting, the needs discovery, and the presentation of options. Now, this could absolutely be done in reverse for an outbound call. It could change for a customer service call. I'm thinking of this as customer sees the ad, they go online, they look for a phone number, they call the number, and they get a contact center agent on the phone. So let's look at Geico. If somebody calls into Geico in the greeting, right? Think about how that greeting might be unique for their brand. An example I would use is they're probably going to mention savings, right? Thank you for calling Geico. My name is Chris. How can I help you save today, right? They might want to double down on the fact that the expectation is you're going to save. I'm confident that I will save you money, and I'm setting that tone early on in the conversation. We could go back and forth about whether or not they should or should not say that, but that is an opportunity for them to bring their brand platform into that conversation and brand the experience from the get-go. Let's talk about needs discovery, right? Needs discovery is critically important for each one of these. With Geico, so if you're going to save them money, you want to prove that you're saving them money. You need to understand what they were paying before or what their other options are, or you're not positioning yourself as savings. All you're doing is providing them a quote or a price. You're not positioning yourself as savings. So if you are going to stick on the brand platform, you are going to be identifying things like, what other companies have you looked at? Who are you using before? When you call us today, who's your current provider? And really understanding what quotes they have if they're shopping around or what their current price is so you can do that comparison. Their whole brand platform depends on that comparison. Then when you think about presenting the need, right, when you're going to present the solution, you're going to explain a recommended plan, but you're also going to provide that pricing comparison, that savings in there. You will never just say, for what you need today or for what you called for, the price is going to be X. You're always going to say your price is X, and this plan will be saving you X amount over what you're currently paying or over what the quote was from Allstate or Progressive. They need to tie that all together and make sure that the promise that they made of savings is being threaded through the entire interaction. Now, some of you on the phone may be saying, well, I would do it this or I would do it that way. That's great. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Anything that I'm saying right now is not gospel. These are just examples of how a Geico phone call can and should sound different from a Progressive phone call. Let's think about Progressive, okay? When you think about Progressive, those are all about choice, all about choice. So putting the choice in the customer's hand early is important. Thank you for calling Progressive. My name is Chris. Where would you like to start today? Ask them a question. Where do they want to start? What did you call in for? How can I help you today? Those are pretty generic. What did you call in for and how can I help you? Where would you like to start? Give them the opportunity to say, I am in control of this conversation. Everything that happens from here on out, I am driving this train. I'm going to be the one who's going to drive what I need, ultimately what I want to pay. Now, how does that translate into needs discovery? Finding out their budget immediately. You might not do that with Geico. You're going to find out what they're paying elsewhere or what other quotes they have. With Progressive, you're going to try to find out what their budget is. How much can you afford to pay or what are you looking to pay? It's a different question, very different question. It's going to create a different experience and it's going to create a very different presentation of the solution. So when you go to present the solution with Progressive, I think everybody on this phone can probably understand the insurance business well enough. What they mean by name your own price is tell us how much you want to pay, and we're going to see if we can provide coverage for you, as low a coverage as we possibly can within your price range. So all they're doing is playing with the types of coverage. It might be your deductible. It might be how much collision coverage you have. It might be your third-party bodily harm clause. There's a lot of different levers that they have in the insurance business, but what they're saying is, forget all those levers. We're not going to go that route. We're going to take what you want to pay, and we're going to try, let's just use auto insurance for an example, we're going to make sure that you have the coverage that you need for what you're able to pay. Now, that might mean that they have a $2,000 deductible. That's not what they're saying. They're not saying we're going to offer you low deductibles. They're saying we're going to make sure that on a monthly basis you're paying what you want. So when they explain that solution, it's really important that they explain you are going to be paying the amount that you want or less, and this is what you're getting. They need to explain what the package includes. Allstate, very different, right? Really a big term. Probably a little bit more traditional in the sense of how the flow of a call would go. So when you think about the greeting, mention protection or peace of mind. Something around how can we protect you today, or something that conveys we're here, you're safe, you're home, we're like family, we've got your back. Injecting that early in the call is important. Needs discovery. With Allstate, you're in good hands, right? We've got your back. We've got your family's back. So when you think about that, truly understanding what it is that they want to protect, this is a more emotional connection. This is less of a transactional brand platform and more of an emotional brand platform. So you want to understand their home, their family. What are they hoping to insure? What's important to their family, right? What do they need to protect? So in asking those questions, you should be getting a little bit more exhaustive view of that customer, because in theory, that's why they called. They called because they're responding to the fact that you are the good hands neighbor. You are going to take care of them. They want to be taken care of. They should be asking you the things that are important to you, what they need to help you protect. When it comes down to presenting the solution, you're focusing on quality, not price. You're focusing on how comprehensive it is. Allstate, given their brand platform, provides more opportunity for things like upsell and cross-sell, right? In theory, you've got a customer that's calling in with a little bit more of an open mind in terms of, yeah, I'm here to get what I need. I'm not here to cheap out. So this gives you the opportunity to say, okay, well, based on some of the things that you're looking to protect, sounds like you've got a number of different vehicles, sounds like you've got some nice new vehicles, whatever the case may be. We recommend X coverage because this is going to give you the greatest peace of mind. They're able to tie that back to the needs, but do it in a way that is all about the customer's emotional state, not about their wallet. Two completely different things. Now, Esurance. This is the one we probably all know the least about, and this is a little bit different. Okay, it's a little hard. Painless, right? It's a painless process. It's simple. So the greeting. My take on the greeting would be, if I had a team in working with Esurance right now, I'd say, if you're building a branded experience for that customer, as few words as possible. As little as you can possibly say to help the customer understand that they're in the right place and that you can help them, you should be very judicious with your words. Don't overtalk. Don't get long-winded. Keep things as simple and quick as possible. That's also going to reduce things like handle time, which is going to mean it's efficient. That is going to be the expectation that an Esurance customer has, surprisingly painless. Get them in, get them out. Now, when you think about some of the greetings, a lot of times you may go into asking a little bit of information about the customer, gathering some details. Okay, before we get started, I need to ask you a few questions about your so-and-so or so-and-so. If you have to do that, get as little information as you possibly need in order to proceed to the next step. The sooner you get the customer an option in front of them that matches their needs, the sooner and more efficiently you can do that, the more Esurance is on brand. Brief, targeted questioning strategy. In terms of the needs discovery, this is a place where a company like Esurance should invest a lot of time in thinking about what is the absolute quickest way to get the information that we need in order to present them a price and a quote. We don't want to ask too many questions. And frankly, at Esurance, if I'm the CMO of Esurance, I do not want my experience to be filled with a lot of upselling and cross-selling. That's not their brand. That's not the promise they're making to customers. Surprisingly painless isn't, I called for one thing and you tried to sell me three more. So if that's really what they're banking on for their brand, they need to live it, and they need to make sure that they're keeping it as efficient as possible. When you're presenting the solution, keep the options and recommendations very simple. As little jargon as you can possibly have, as straightforward on what they get, what the price is, and how it met the need that they called in about. Keep your words, keep the words at a premium. Do not overspeak. Do not go on too long. So when you think about these different brands, you think about the way that you could tailor different aspects of the customer experience to their brand. You can feel how it would look if you were to call Geico and the process goes through that way versus if you call Allstate, right? The picture I've painted hopefully gives you a sense of it is different. It should be different. If you were to take this and drag it over into an industry, say the airline industry, okay? Let's say Geico is Southwest, okay? Geico would be like Southwest. They would be they've been a low-cost provider for a number of years. The reality is they're not the cheapest anymore. They're not even close to the cheapest anymore. But people have a perception of value with Southwest that they've built up over the years, and it's stuck. And the experience that they deliver ties in with it. It's sort of no frills, but no frills in a fun way. They make it a game instead of apologizing for it. They make it a game. Now, Progressive. I've tried to think about who Progressive would be. I would have said somebody like AirTran, but Southwest bought AirTran. Trying to go for a value-based provider. We're going for the budget-type customer. We're going to put the power in your hands to make sure you've got what you need. I would say somebody like Spirit, but for any of you that have ever flown Spirit, it's so low budget, I don't even know if it fits in this category or if it fits in this conversation. Allstate is going to be more of your tried and true, right? That's going to be your United, your Delta. We've been around. We go to the big places you need to get to. We've got the most nonstops. We're the most dependable, although that might not necessarily be the case. They might project themselves as the most dependable. Esurance, I do look at this as this might be like the truly no frills, straight to the point, quick and dirty. You're not going to check a bag. This is things like, I would say, like a Frontier, if anybody's ever flown Frontier. And even flying Frontier is actually different from flying Spirit. The experience is very different. It's no frills, but it's not no frills in an annoying way, whereas Spirit can tend to be in a little bit of an annoying way. Hopefully there's nobody from Spirit on the phone today. Don't mean to take pot shots at them, but it's just very different. Their brand matches the experience, and it's fine. It's just they're going for a certain segment of the population. But as you think about the companies that you either work for, in some cases, the brand that you work for, or the brands that you represent. If you're in the contact center space, it might be a different brand that you're working with every single week. It's critical that you understand how their brand platform can affect how effectively you are interacting with their customers. You are brand representatives for that company, whether you are a business process outsourcer, a third-party call center, an in-house call center, it doesn't matter. If you answer the phone and say their name, then you are projecting that brand, and you've got to live up to it. The point of this whole conversation is there's a lot of ways you can live up to it, and there are things that you can be doing. We're going to talk about those here in just a minute. But let's talk about what the industry standard is here for insurance. Think about USAA. Take a moment, think about USAA. What is their brand platform? What do they stand for? Okay? For those of you who don't know, USAA is a company that caters to the families, to service members and their families, so people that have served in the past. Their brand platform is we know what it means to serve. Their whole brand platform is built on the idea of service. Their tagline represents a positive customer experience before anybody's even called. So there is a high expectation of what the service will be like, but they deliver on it. They have branded their customer experience to the point where they have been the category leader for insurance 2010 through 2017. 2018 statistics aren't out yet. The assumption is they'd be 2018 as well. So when you look at a company like USAA, they are walking the walk. They're finding a way to take the promise they're making to the customer, thread that through to every touch point that they have with their customers, and make sure that they are competing and winning on the idea of the brand experience, not just the brand message. So how does this benefit? Now, we'll take just a couple minutes here and wrap up before we take some questions. But when we think of how this impacts the customer and the company, okay, we talked at the beginning about, in my bio that Chris read, talk about companies, customers, the brands, the employees, and the customers all winning, okay? So when you think about the customer, if the expectation matches the service, they got what they want, right? A promise made was a promise kept. They are happy with that. The second piece is their needs are met. So if they called in with a certain expectation and their hunch about what they were going to get was right, they both got the experience that they wanted, but they also walked away with the product or service that they need, and they feel better about the fact that you said you could do this, you delivered it with the type of service quality that I expected, and you got me what I needed. Ultimately, that leads to higher satisfaction with the experience, right? When we talk about brands competing, not on product or price, but competing on experience, this is the way you win. If you can deliver those things, a promise made is a promise kept, and you meet the needs, that's how you're driving satisfaction. The stats before should give you the indication of the pendulum is swinging so far in the direction of the experience that this is a compelling case for companies to invest in. Then you think about the company themselves. If there's one thing I know is that these stats absolutely positively come through. Companies that invest in branding their experience and getting their people on the phones, their people interacting with customers, whether it's retail, contact center, even chat, to believe in that brand platform and that brand message returns higher conversion, first and foremost, converting a higher percentage of calls into sales, higher customer satisfaction, greater customer retention, and ultimately better revenue. If you're gaining more customers and you're keeping more of them, your revenue is going to go up. This is not hard math to do. I think where organizations are I think struggling to make the leap is in truly seeing that these are not HR programs, right? The team at Interview, we typically don't work with the HR team. We work with the marketing leadership team. We work with sales as well. Sales is a stakeholder in our process, but we work with customer service. They're a stakeholder. Anybody who represents the brand is a stakeholder for us, including third-party centers, third-party authorized dealer, retail programs, things like that. But ultimately, it is the marketing team that has built the brand story. They've made the brand promise. We believe marketing is responsible for keeping that brand promise. So when you think about where to start, this is kind of the jumping off point. If you want to get better aligned with your brand platform, you have to know what it is. Identify who the key marketing contacts are. If you're in-house with an organization, you may know who these folks are. If this is a brand that you represent, you're an employee of the brand, you may know who the folks are, you may interact with them on a daily basis. I know people who work in marketing departments where the call centers roll up to them. They roll up directly to marketing. In some ways, or in a lot of ways, that makes sense. Ask for their help. Tell them that you want to be as aligned with the brand as you possibly can. You believe it puts you in a position to make your people successful. The agents on the phone are more successful if they understand and have confidence in the brand. They have more confidence in interacting with the customer. They project that onto the customer. They're more convincing. They're more relatable. They're more fun to do business with. That is going to lead to better performance metrics. So asking for their help is important. What help are you asking for? If you are answering phone calls or placing phone calls for just on a day-to-day basis that's not really campaign-driven, understanding the basis and the foundation for the brand is critically important. What are they trying to put out there? Having the marketing team really tell you that story and help you understand, okay, you're spending millions of dollars on marketing to reach the customer with a certain message. What is your intent behind that? What are you trying to say? What do you want them to experience when they show up? Working hand in hand with them and drawing that out. In some cases, they might offer it. In some cases, you might have to draw it out of them. But marketing absolutely has to be a partner to tell you the story. The people on the phones have to repeat it, but marketing has to tell it, and they have to give you the why behind it. So when you think about campaigns, for example, some of you might be doing outbound calling for a campaign. Okay, great. If we're going to do outbound calling, what marketing is accompanying this? Is there a television advertising campaign? Is there a digital campaign? What exposure might these folks have had to the brand? When you think about organizations, think about companies you've worked with. How many times does marketing tell you what they're doing before they actually do it, right? Understanding what marketing is trying to accomplish and what promises they're making so people on the phones can keep them is critically important. And we'll wrap up with I'll leave this up on the screen while people ask questions. And this is the information for the next session. In the next session, we're going to get a little bit deeper into how do you really make that connection, right? Once you understand what the brand platform is, how do you integrate that into the day-to-day operation of the call center and really get the agents to rally around it? So that'll be the next topic. Chris mentioned it will be December 5th, and I can open it up to questions. Chris, I believe you're going to moderate?
I am. So again, everyone, as a reminder, you can ask questions of Chris by using the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, or you can email me questions, which some people have already done. So Chris, with that, I'm going to ask you some of the questions that I have received. So One of the ones that I got sent to me was, since customer expectations are a moving target, which we all know, how do contact centers make sure they are in constant alignment with the brand strategy?
So that's a tough question. It's really a two-part answer. The first thing I would say is, because customer expectations are a moving target, nobody knows that better than the people on the phones. Nobody knows nobody knows how important it is to nobody knows what's important to customers more than the people who talk to them every single day. So I think that really starts with, if you want to stay in alignment, the people on the phones, there has to be a feedback loop where they're providing information about what they're hearing on the phones, what they're hearing from customers, back up to the marketing department. The reality is this has to be a two-way street. This just can't be marketing says, this is the gospel, it's written on the tablet, take it, read it in a script every single time, and execute it. That's not reality because of what you said. The customer needs are changing. So I look at it as you have to be willing to raise your hand and ask what the intention of the marketing program is. You also have to share feedback on how that's being received by customers so they can potentially tweak it, right? How things fit into the brand needs to be a constant dialogue with marketing, not something that happens once and then people just jump back on the phones. So my long answer, longer, I would say it's definitely providing feedback. If you want to stay in alignment with marketing, offer them feedback, ask them what they think, and adjust on the fly in cooperation with them.
Can I ask kind of a follow-up to that?
Sure.
You know, it's just been my experience, and I'll say it that I've grown up in the industry, and there's been, in my experience, marketing thinks that they have the pulse on everything that's going on, and that's not necessarily the case a lot of the time. So how do you get them to truly understand that, no, that's not the case, and this is, you know, what you sent to us is not really what the customer is saying? How do you get them to truly because a lot of the times they may say, no, you don't, that's not right, even though we're saying, yes, that's absolutely what the customer is saying, and they're saying, no, you don't really understand. Do you get where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that, so, and I've been in plenty of call centers where I've heard agents say, well, we have customers who say this or that, and there are the customers that say they don't like the blank about our offering. And I say, okay, how often? Well, a customer said it to me the other day. Which day? It was last Wednesday. Okay, how many phone calls have you taken since then? Right? I've had situations where people have said they're offering the feedback on the one-offs. They're offering the exceptions, not the rules, right? And I think that that's where the marketing team is going to tend to be skeptical is, well, of course you're going to give me all the outliers, but you need to give me, I think the key to that, Chris, and it's a really good question, I think you have to share the positive with the negative. I think you have to share the things that are working and the things that you're leveraging in those conversations that are resonating with customers, not just the things you think that need to be tweaked, right? I think you have to build a relationship and establish a relationship with marketing that's all about constant improvement. It's not about, you know, pointing fingers or anything like that. The challenge is because these organizations, these departments don't talk to each other that frequently, or they don't talk to each other well, there's not that trust built up. You got to build up that trust. And I'll give you an example. The organizations that we work with, not all of them, and I'm not pointing fingers at our clients, but most large organizations, marketing creates materials, they post them on some sort of a shared drive or intranet or something like that, they wipe their hands of it and they say, there we go, we got them what they needed. They need to lean in. They need to spend some more time in the trenches. They need to gather the feedback in a more systematic way. Gathering feedback needs to be an organizational strength. That would be the ultimate answer to your question. They need to make gathering feedback a scalable strength inside the organization, not something where they're just getting random comments here or there. Giving a voice to the internal audiences, a voice to the internal customer, so to speak, is a great way for marketing to truly put their finger on the pulse. I know an organization, you know, I can call out Rogers Cable up in Canada has set up an entire department called Voice of the Front Lines, and they are making employee feedback in a systematic strength that rolls all the way back up to the marketing department. And they are, if there's a gap in confidence or a gap in understanding, they're like a SWAT team filling that gap. But they've made that gathering of feedback a strength.
So really, truly, like whether it's like a company or a company heads or company or department-wide monitoring sessions or giving them quantitative and qualitative data, this is what we're hearing on all ends of the spectrum, those types of scenarios, that would help bring all groups together.
Yeah, I mean, the way that we do it, the interview team has a proprietary method that we call a brand transfer study. And what we do is, it's not a survey necessarily, it's not a bunch of opinion questions. It's really helping to help an organization understand how aligned the viewpoint of their corporate team is with the people who are out there in the field talking to customers. So we're able to come back to them and say, we do it over a period of time. So we'll do one to start, and it's sort of that's our baseline. And then over time, we measure what we call the brand transfer score. And over time, we'll see the alignment between the corporate story and the field story improve as it pulls closer into alignment. And they're able to see that there's a correlation between the improvement in that score and the improvement in the metrics that we talked about. But we are trying to give organizations a way to make feedback gathering, like you said, to make it qualitative and quantitative. It can't just be a bunch of one-off comments. It can't be, one time I had a customer say this. It has to be something that they're seeing on a regular basis.
Great, I love that. Here's another question I got too. Can you elaborate on the difference of scope between customer experience and customer service? And the person said, I feel like sometimes there's a perception that these two are the same thing.
Yeah, so I would say I think that can you read it one more time, between customer experience and customer service?
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah, so I think that so customer experience, I think, is more the umbrella, right? When we think back to, we could click back to the slide, when we think about the way that the perception of the brand is shaped up, I think of customer service as a subset of that experience, right? When somebody calls in, on the right half here in the brand experience portion, when somebody calls in, the service they receive is sort of one aspect of their overall experience, right? Their interactions online are part of it. The shipping, or however the fulfillment of the order or the service happens, that's an aspect of the experience. Experience is more all-encompassing, where I think the customer service is, if I have a problem and I call up, how well do they resolve my problem? But that's really only one slice of the pie. So experience, think of experience as sort of every type of interaction, every interaction that could shape how they perceive that brand. I think the customer service is just one piece of that.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, the next question I have is, do you have any examples of innovative technology that has helped marketing teams ensure that all departments are on the same page? That's a very interesting question.
That is a good question. So there's a million of them. I actually, I got a kind of a sideways glance from my wife last night when she was talking about something related to technology, and I said, "Are you talking about MarTech?" And she looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" But kind of that hot buzz phrase for marketing technology. There's a lot of different marketing technology out there. We have worked with some partners that are, to me, the ones that are the best for the things that we're talking about are the technologies that can get the information out to the team in the easiest to find, easiest to digest way. So call them content management systems, call them knowledge portals. I'm not talking about company intranets. I'm not talking about SharePoint. I'm talking about very slick user interfaces, the type of interface that you would have for a consumer that is built for the internal audience so they can find things easily. And once they find them, it's in a language that they can understand, that they'd be comfortable repeating, and that they can, again, it all comes down to giving agents the most confidence they can have in the brand. So getting it to them so they can find it, they can access it quickly, and that they can digest what they see when they get there is critically important. A lot of times, people are looking through knowledge databases while they're on a call. They're trying to find an answer to something. The easier you can make their life, the more confidence they have, the better they serve the customer. And it goes back to friendly, knowledgeable, efficient, the things that customers want out of the experience. That's a great way to enable them to be better. The one thing I would say here, I know we're getting short on time, is burying your team with a bunch of training isn't the answer. The answer is not more product training. The answer is help them understand the story and then give them the tools and access to the tools, easy access to the tools, to find the additional answers that they need not trying to make them experts. To think that we have organizations, you take one of the insurance companies, Allstate probably has 50 different brand managers. They probably have 50 different product categories inside their organization, and those people are designed to be experts in that product category. You cannot make a call center agent on the phone, can't make anybody an expert in all 50 of those categories. Help them understand how they're supposed to serve the customer, then give them the tools to serve the customer as effectively as possible. Help them find things, don't overload them. Overloading them with information drives down confidence. It doesn't make them more confident.
Absolutely. I'm going to throw out this one last question, even though we had a couple more, but I think this one's a really good one to end on. In your opinion, what is the most important first step that contact centers and marketing can take to improve their customer experience strategy?
The number one step is they need to define it, right? And we did a little bit of it when we looked at the different insurance companies. The experience that you want to deliver needs to be documented, and people need to be able to answer the question why. Well, okay, why are we going to greet people this way? Because it ties in with our blank. Okay, why are we going to ask these questions when we're learning more about the customer? Because it leads to our recommendation for, there should be answers to why. It needs to be well thought out, it needs to be documented. I will make all of you a promise. It is not rocket science. The challenge is most organizations are building things like call flows and other, I hate to say the word script, but I know there's scripts in call centers, but they're building those tools for the call center agent and maybe even building out the experience and defining the experience without truly understanding what the brand stands for, without truly understanding it. And it may be there's a difference between good customer service and a branded experience. If there's one thing everybody should take away from today, there's a difference between good customer service and a branded experience. We have a client that before we started working with them delivered excellent customer experience. Excellent customer service. Customers liked doing business with them. The challenge was they were not ending on the experience and ending at the place that they wanted. So the experience wasn't great. The service was good. And that goes back to the previous question about customer service and customer experience. But ultimately, this comes down to understanding the brand and then writing down how the different touch points, whether they're call centers or retail, how those different touch points need to reflect that brand every single time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Everyone, that's all the time that we have for today. Again, I thank Chris for this very informative webinar and our partnership with Interview. Again, the recording of the webinar will be available on the PACE website in just a few days. As a reminder, for those of you that might not have heard it, we're going to be having our first ever Contact Center Summit in Princeton, New Jersey on November 14th. We'll be discussing a myriad of topics that are focused on compliance and contact center operations. You can find out more information about the event as well as you can register. Just visit the PACE website. For attending this webinar today, I'm extending a special offer for you. When you register, just enter the code PACE20OFF, and that will take $20 off of your registration fee. Don't forget to check out all of the other opportunities on our website. Again, for our December our part 2 of this webinar series that will happen in December, like we talked about, our 2019 Convention and Expo, our call for speakers for our ACX 19, our benchmark portal operational certifications, and many other PACE opportunities. We hope to see you very soon at another PACE webinar, like our part 2 for this webinar series, at a national, regional, or chapter event. Thank you so much for your time today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone,
Bye
for
now.
attending.
Bye.